You want to achieve success. You dream about a good life, a peaceful life, a life where you wake up proud of who you are and what you have built. You imagine a future where people respect you, where you are no longer struggling, where your dreams finally become real. But when the moment comes to act, something happens. You delay. You say, "I'm tired today." You say, "I will start tomorrow." And tomorrow becomes the most dangerous word in the world, because tomorrow turns into another tomorrow and another, until one day you realize that years have passed and the dream you once had is still just a dream. Not because you weren't capable, but because you never started. Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by green fields and endless farmland, lived a young man named Peter. The village was known for its hard-working farmers. Every morning, long before the sun fully arose above the hills, the farmers were already outside. You could hear the sound of metal tools hitting the soil. You could see men carrying baskets of vegetables and women watering young plants in their gardens. The air smelled like fresh earth and morning dew. Everyone in the village worked hard. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone except Peter. Peter was known in the village for one thing: laziness. While the farmers woke up before sunrise, Peter was still asleep. While the villagers were already halfway through their workday, Peter was just waking up, stretching lazily and yawning as if the world owed him more sleep. He had dreams, though, big dreams. Whenever someone asked Peter about his future, he would speak confidently. One day, he would say, "I will have the biggest farm in this village. One day, I will become rich. One day, people will admire me." But after saying those words, Peter would sit under a tree, watching others work. Days passed, weeks passed, and nothing in Peter's life changed. One morning, as Peter was slowly walking through the village road, he saw an old farmer working in his garden. The old farmer was older than most villagers. His hair was gray, and his face was marked with years of hard work under the sun. But his movements were strong and calm. He worked carefully, watering plants and removing small weeds from the soil. Peter stopped and watched him for a moment. The farmer noticed him and smiled kindly. "Good morning, Peter," the farmer said. Peter nodded. "Good morning." The farmer wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at him carefully. "Tell me something," the farmer said. "What do you do every day?" Peter hesitated for a moment. Then he said proudly, "I have many plans." The old farmer raised an eyebrow. "Plans?" Peter nodded confidently. "Yes, I will become a great farmer one day." The old farmer smiled gently. "Plans are good," he said slowly, "but plans without action are like seeds that are never planted." Peter didn't fully understand what the farmer meant. The farmer then gestured with his hand. "Come with me," he said. Peter followed him into the garden. The garden was beautiful. Rows of green plants stretched across the soil, each one carefully cared for. Some plants were small and young, others were tall and strong, ready for harvest. The farmer walked toward a small corner of the garden and gently pulled a young plant from the soil. He held it carefully and handed it to Peter. "Take this," the farmer said. Peter looked at the plant in his hand. He asked, "What should I do with it?" "Plant it in your own garden," the farmer replied. Peter shrugged and took the plant home. Behind his small house was a piece of empty land that he had never really used, so he dug a small hole and placed the young plant into the soil. Then he covered it with dirt. And that was it. Peter walked back inside his house and forgot about it. The next day, he slept late. The day after that, he went for a long walk. The young plant remained outside alone under the sun. No water, no care, no attention. 2 days later, Peter suddenly remembered the plant. "Oh," he said to himself, "I should check the plant." He walked outside to his garden. When he saw it, his face dropped. The leaves were dry. The small stem had turned brown. The plant had died. Peter felt frustrated. He pulled the dry plant from the soil and walked back to the farmer's garden. "The plant you gave me died," Peter said. "It didn't grow." The old farmer looked at him calmly. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he slowly walked to another part of the garden and picked another young plant. He placed it into Peter's hands again, but this time his voice was more serious. "Take this plant," he said, "and plant it in your garden again." Peter nodded. Then the farmer added something important. "But this time, you must water it every single day." Peter frowned slightly. "Every day?" he asked. "Yes," the farmer replied firmly. "No excuses, no delays, no tomorrow. Every day." Peter returned home and planted the new young plant in the soil. The next morning, he remembered the farmer's words, so he filled a small bucket with water and walked to the garden. He poured the water slowly around the plant. Then he went back inside. The next morning, he did the same thing, and the next, and the next. At first, it felt like a small task, just a few moments each day. But Peter kept doing it, every day, even when he felt lazy, even when he felt tired. Days passed, then weeks passed. One morning, Peter walked outside with his bucket of water, but when he looked at the plant, he stopped. The plant had grown. Its leaves were green, its stem was stronger, it looked healthy and alive. Peter's heart filled with excitement. For the first time in his life, he had stayed consistent with something, and it had worked. He ran to the farmer's garden.
"Farmer!" he shouted. The farmer looked up from his work. Peter smiled widely. "My young plant is growing!" The farmer nodded calmly. "I knew it would." Peter looked confused. "What changed?" he asked. "Why did the first plant die?" The farmer leaned on his tool and looked at Peter. "That plant was a test." "A test?" Peter asked. The farmer nodded. "Yes. Dreams are like plants. If you ignore them, they die. If you delay taking care of them, they dry out. But if you water them every single day with action, they grow." The farmer placed his hand on Peter's shoulder. "To achieve your dreams, you must treat them the same way. Take action every single day. No excuses, no delays." Peter stood silently. For the first time, he truly understood. Success was not about luck, it was about consistency. That day, Peter returned home with a different mindset. The next morning, he woke up earlier, then earlier again the next day. He started working in his garden. At first, the villagers laughed. "Look at Peter," they said. "The lazy boy thinks he is a farmer now." But Peter didn't stop. Every day he worked. Every day he planted. Every day he watered his plants and his dreams. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Slowly, Peter's garden became the most beautiful garden in the village. His crops grew strong and healthy. His harvest became larger than anyone expected. The same villagers who once laughed at him began visiting his farm. "Peter," they asked, "how did you do it?" Peter smiled and gave them the same simple answer. "I learned to water my dreams every single day." And from that day forward, Peter was no longer known as the laziest man in the village. He became known as the best farmer in the village. All because one day, he finally stopped waiting for tomorrow.